All right, we'll go ahead and get started. I wanted to let everybody get in because we're going to start this morning. It's not morning. Feels like I just woke up. We're going to start this evening with a few questions from what we're going to study tonight that I know our kids will know. So, kids, first few questions of the night are just for you guys. All right? So, we are studying in Daniel chapter 6. You kids don't have to know this, but do you guys know what happens in Daniel chapter 6? You get extra points if you know this. I know that you know what happens in Daniel chapter 6, but do you know that it's in Daniel chapter 6? Anybody? What is it? Yep, Daniel and the lion's den. That is correct. Britain gets points, extra points actually, because I wasn't saying you had to know that one. Now, who can tell me who the king was that threw Daniel in the lion's den? Yes, Simon. Oh, you're so close. That is really, really close, because he was also a king that we find in Daniel. That you get a second chance, though. What did Nebuchadnezzar throw some people into to kill them? Yep, yeah, the fiery furnace. That's right. You still get a point, Simon. That's right. Who can tell me who the king was? King Darius. Very, very good. And who can tell me what it was that Daniel got in trouble for? How did they try to trap him? Oh, it's got to be somebody. You already got your point, Simon. Anybody? What did Daniel get? What did the bad guys get Daniel in trouble for? Oh, I know you know it. Oh, that's cheating. Cole, you should know that. You should know. What did they get thrown in the fiery furnace for? You got to know this already. Yes, Katie, what do you think? What do you think? Oh, that's so. Did I just say fiery furnace? Yeah. I did. So you're right. You're right. What did Daniel get thrown into the lion's den for? So you still get your point. I asked the question wrong. What did Daniel get thrown into the lion's den for? You wouldn't get punished for doing this. He did it 3 times a day, even when they told him that he couldn't do it. What'd he do? Oh, come on. I'm giving you a hint right now. Just them. Y'all can't answer. Come on. What's that? What did he do? What do you guys think he did 3 times a day? Yes, Katie. They did not want him to bow down to God and pray. That's right. That's right. Excellent job, everyone. And you're welcome to answer any other questions that we have tonight. So if you would turn in your Bibles to Daniel chapter 6, we will be studying about Daniel in the lion's den. Who can tell me, just give me, where did we just leave off? I mean, we're jumping kind of right almost in the middle of a sentence in the beginning of Daniel chapter 6. What just happened? Yeah. So we had Belshazzar's demise, if you will, the writing on the wall, and then who came in that night and killed him and took over? Yeah. So at least it's as is stated here, Darius or Darius. However, I always say Darius. I'm not saying it that way because I think it's the right way. It's just the way that's going to come out of my mouth. But Darius sounds great too. Yeah. Darius the Mede takes over the kingdom. And what's the kingdom that has taken over Babylon, that's knocked them out? Yeah, so the Medes and the Persians, the Medo-Persian Empire, if you will. I could use a clicker. And as it's stated here, we have, hope this works. We have Darius the Mede being the king at this time. So just a reminder of our patterns and structure here. So we are in chapter 6, so we're on kind of well, it's E here, but maybe like B with a little hyphen on it in our chiastic structure. B part 2. So we've got a vision of 4 kingdoms, a martyr story with the 3 friends. We have Nebuchadnezzar's pride and him being humbled, Belshazzar's pride and being humbled, and then we have this second martyr story here. So there's going to be a lot of connections that we see, and maybe even slight differences that are intended for us to notice those differences in Daniel's story right here, as he faces some somewhat similar circumstances. And then we'll get another vision of 4 kingdoms. I was just telling Norma, I'm really excited to get to chapter 7 because I love chapter 7 and because I'm not teaching it. And we get to learn from Nathan in that. So really excited for that. So to give you a little view of the change in empire here. So this is Nathan's slide. So, but I'm pretty sure the intention here is that, and I think it's red. Is that red in the middle? Colorblind. That would be the Babylonian Empire getting taken over just now by the Persian and Median Empire. And then we have this whole area here that would be this new Medo-Persian Empire, kind of big. And when Darius at the end says he sends an edict to the whole world, it's because everybody in his kingdom is pretty much the whole world at this point in time. Really, really big place. This is the new, big, powerful, most powerful kingdom in the world. So in the statue, we've knocked off the gold here. The gold is no longer. Now we're down to the silver with the Medo-Persian Empire, fulfilling the prophecy that God has already given that Babylon wouldn't stick around and would be destroyed. So let's go ahead and get into the text this morning, did it again. This afternoon, Daniel chapter 6. Would somebody read 1 down through verse 9?
Please Darius to set over the kingdom 120 satraps, and over the whole kingdom. Over these 3 governors, of whom Daniel was one, that the satraps might give an account to them, so that the king would suffer no loss. Then this Daniel distinguished himself above the governors and the satraps because an excellent spirit was in him. And the king gave a thought to setting him over the whole realm. So the governors and satraps sought to find some charge against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they could find no charge or fault because he was faithful, nor was there any error or fault found in him. Then these men said, "We shall not find any fault or any charge against this Daniel unless we find it against him concerning the law of his God." So these governors and satraps brought before the king and said thus to him, "Keep your eyes, live forever. All the governors of the kingdom, the administrators and satraps, counselors and advisors, have consulted together to establish a royal statute to make a firm decree that whoever petitions any god or man for 30 days except you, shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, O king, establish the decree and sign the writing so that it cannot be changed according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which does not alter. Therefore, Darius signed the written decree."
Okay, so before we get into some of the ins and outs, just what jumps out to you? What's interesting to you as you read this, maybe with fresh eyes today?
Well, there's been the change from the Babylonians to the Medes and Persians, and in some way they recognized the importance of Daniel and kept him in a high position.
Absolutely. That's the first thing that jumped out to me as well. Daniel, an advisor of the previous regime that's been taken out, though maybe it was fortunate that he wasn't a very prominent advisor in it. Very quickly, maybe just this could very well be within a couple of years after this happens, after Babylon is taken over, and he's already distinguished himself enough not only to be of the top 3 who are over all the satraps, but what is Nebuchadnezzar wanting to do on top of that? Or, blah, I already said it, Darius. There we go. What's Darius wanting to do on top of that? Yeah, go ahead and make him over all of them. Pretty much, have him run the ins and outs of the kingdom. Pretty much would be the highest ranking non-royal official or something along those lines. So yeah, we have Daniel again distinguishing himself very quickly. Why is he able to do that? Yeah, God's help. Absolutely, absolutely. He, as we're going to learn again and again, already have and will again in this story, he's very, very consistent in his service to his God. And we've learned a number of times, this is a man in whom God has given a lot of wisdom. Every situation he's handled has been expertly crafted and handled by Daniel through the wisdom that God's given him. What else do you see? Yes.
I see the human nature of these people. Instead of rising to his level, they want to pull him down.
Absolutely, absolutely. And isn't that human nature? I think all of these stories are ones, and this one especially, we can just really see the nature of humans and wicked ones, right? And especially when you have a really, really just, good, wise, trusted person, and by the way, he also serves God. That's going to, in this kind of society, is not going to be somebody that people end up loving, and people are going to want to get him out. Other than just jealousy, I mean, why would you want somebody upstanding like Daniel out? It's not one of them. What do you say? Yeah, you're not going to be able to defraud. What does he say that what's the reason that he has structured it this way? Yeah, he might not be defrauded so that the king might suffer no loss. So in Darius's mind in doing this is to prevent loss. And the first thing we find out is, okay, there's a bunch of people trying to get rid of the guy that he's put in place so that he might not suffer loss. Kind of tells you they don't have the kingdom's or Darius's best interest at heart here. What else do you notice?
That there was no fault in Daniel.
Yeah. There's
There wasn't anything to be found.
nothing, right? I dare say if my coworkers wanted to get me ousted, they could probably find something to get me fired. I hate to say it, but I probably could. Especially if they're willing to lie and do all that kind of thing. I mean, they can't even come up with a lie to get him trapped in, But that's amazing, and that just tells you about Daniel's character even more. They can't find anything in his administration. Nobody he's letting slide. No money he's taking on the side. Nothing at all. What else? Yeah. How faithful did they know he was to his God? Absolutely. And I don't know about you, but I would almost think that people kind of expect other people to be like them, right? So I would think natural human nature would be that they would say something like, oh, somebody gives this idea, and they're like, no, that's not going to work. If he does that, he'll just not pray for 30 days, and he'll be right back at it. No, they were that confident that they took all of this risk to do this, knowing that, oh, he's still going to be praying. He's still going to do this because they're putting their lives and their careers in their own hands, in the hands of Darius, in presenting this kind of thing, and in concocting this scheme in the first place. What else do you see? Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, you've probably got a new king, at least as Daniel reads here. the last line of 31, which I think in the Hebrew text or something, verse 31 of chapter 5 is actually verse 1 of chapter 6. So, this Darius the Mede received the kingdom being about 62 years old. It pleased Darius, it doesn't sound like a whole lot of time has gone by here. He's going to be trying to establish his kingdom, as you would have to do in that time. And, what advisor, what king wouldn't want to make all of his people have to think about him and have to go through him for any petition that they would make to any god, that they would have to, direct that to him. Absolutely playing on pride yet again. Anything else? Yeah.
One word that jumped out at me in verse 6.
Mm-hmm.
It says, the governors and satraps thronged before the king. In other words, it wasn't one man who saw Daniel pray. Daniel prayed 3 times a day. So they made sure everybody saw him so everybody could come and testify.
Yeah, and they get a group together, right? And kind of to your point, what do they say in verse 7? Yeah, hey, we've all met, and everybody thinks this. Later on, do you think all 120 satraps and their families fit in the lion's den later? I would doubt that. I would highly doubt that even if it was all, it's not all, because somebody's got to be missing from this. Who do we know that wouldn't have gone along with this idea to the king? Daniel, right? So we see a lot of tactics, a lot of scheming. They come together as a group. They do that manipulative thing of, hey, everybody in the church already thinks this. We should really do this. You ever heard that happen? Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It'll only affect him and very few. Yeah.
I think what I saw was Aramaic. The word there indicates a plot.
Yeah.
Agreement. And so it doesn't have to be, would all the 120 governors come in from all over that huge empire just to get Daniel? But
No.
they could get an agreement through letters and things like that, and then people who are in Babylon run with it.
Yeah. You send this thing out. You've got a few people that have this idea that are the core of it, and you get approval, and you go ahead and bring it to the king. But yeah, we see a. Anything else before we dive in? Yeah. Why just 30 days? That's a really good point. And I've thought about that as well and didn't notice that. I'm going to answer it and then I'll come and see what you have to say. I will say one thing is interesting. It's easy to play this off as if that this is an Egyptian society where we know that they had a definite theocracy where the king is considered to be God, right? Not at all the case with these countries and these nations. This is actually, from what I've read, kind of a strange thing, and would likely be interpreted more as not that he's being considered God, but that petitions would have to go through him as a priest of whatever God that they are serving here, which this society right now probably would have been a little bit more, I wouldn't say monotheistic, but less polytheistic as Babylon was, but still the overarching idea is we want to keep all gods happy, so if you find another god for me to serve, let's serve him too. But this, I'm going to get the name wrong, it's like Zoroastrian, yeah, there we go. God is prominent right now that they would be praying to. But yeah, so maybe it's not just in perpetuity from here on, because they aren't really a society that would place the king as a deity in and of himself at this time. Is that what you were going to say?
I think it's more along the lines that the Persians have this thing about not upsetting the apple cart in these countries.
Yeah.
That's how they got them to kind of be not to rebel.
Mm-hmm.
Because they essentially got to keep their things intact. And so 30 days would be enough to rile up the Babylonians.
Yeah.
Because Marduk was their primary god.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and it's really, if you think about it, it's a beautiful trap, because they know even if it is 30 days, Daniel's not going to
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just enough to get them. That's all they needed. And in the, at this period of time, before this edict is signed, is it illegal to worship Yahweh in Babylon and Persia? No, perfectly fine to. There's nothing wrong with it. So that's the one thing that we can get him on. All right, let's dive into it. So we kind of answered this question, who took over the reins of power after the Babylonian Empire was brought to an end? We have Darius the Mede. He's aged at 62. And if you do the math, how old is this putting Daniel now? As a kid or before studying this more in depth, how old was Daniel when you imagined him being tossed into the lion's den? Yeah, pretty young. I'm kind of imagining the same Daniel that I pictured when he's taken into captivity and saying no to the foods. But this is actually a Daniel that's probably in his 80s, an old man being chucked down to the lions. So it makes sense. He's a seasoned, a wise man and politician. He comes right to prominence here, but he's old. Somebody who Darius is actually, the one wise thing he's doing is recognizing Daniel and saying, hey, I'm going to put you prominently here. He's viewed as, maybe the old guard here, maybe the wise old guard that we then want to get out. Yeah, Norma.
Darius may not have been there very long, but as any politician will do, find out who's in power in the court. Who can I rely on?
Yeah.
Who can be trusted to follow me and do what I say? And of course, Daniel has proven himself for many years to that, and I'm sure all the court that's left is testifying to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you might even see that, after this all happens, they might be saying, hey, by the way, Darius, he came in that night and said this was going to happen before it happened. Absolutely. So some significance there. Not all that much time is going by, and we can see that the Medes and the Persians were definitely considered one kingdom at this time, kind of together, but both Median and both Persian all together. And as we said, the vision from Daniel 2 is coming to fruition here. We see the governmental structure. We've got 120 satraps with three governors over them. We see also that same type of rule in Esther. Where there's 127, 50 years after this. And we know from historically that this kind of satrap rule was common. And the Medo-Persian Empire was known for a very orderly structure of their government, as we see evidenced here. Alrighty, but who is Darius the Mede in the first place? This is kind of an important question for you to know about this, if you don't already. Do history books, other than the Bible, because you and I view the Bible as history and probably the most accurately reproduced history that you can find, but from a secular view, outside of the Bible, do we have a mention of Darius the Mede specifically by name? No, we don't. And who took over? Who destroyed Babylon? Cyrus. Yeah, as far as history goes, Cyrus the Persian took over Babylon and led the Persians, the Medo-Persians, to take care of, to take over Babylon. So who is it? There's a number of different ideas here, and I'll tell you what I believe. This first one is the one that I don't believe because it wouldn't make sense on the time. This would be the critical theory that, hey, this is one example where whoever wrote Daniel after the fact got it absolutely wrong because they pulled this Darius guy out of the history books, even though he didn't live for years and years after when this would have happened. It would have been the third king of the Medo-Persian Empire. There's a few historical mentions of King Darius's, but they're all Persians, and they all are much later on. So at least as far as viewing the Bible as inspired, this isn't really a good option for us. But there's a lot of there's a number of very good reasons. I'll tell you, this one is the one that I personally believe, that this is Cyrus, but by another name. He actually was half Persian and half Median. His mom was Median. So calling him a Mede is not wrong. Cyrus didn't claim the title of being king until like the second rule of his reign. So it could make sense that he's not calling himself Cyrus, the Persian king, at this point in time. Also, at the end of the book, at the end of this chapter in verse 28, it says, "So this Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius," and most of your versions probably read, "and the reign of Cyrus the Persian." So there's a couple of explanations for that. But though the Aramaic here is a little bit ambiguous, it can just as well mean during the reign of Darius, that is Cyrus the Persian. So aka this just being another name for the same guy. But can anybody, and this answer's kind of on there, can anybody think of a reason that a Jewish author here might want to make it really prominent that this guy that took over was of Median descent? Let's look at Isaiah 13, verse 15. That's not right. I said 15. It's clear that it says 17 right there. Talking about Babylon, this whole section is judgment on Babylon. "Behold, I am stirring up the Medes against them, who have no regard for silver and no delight in gold." And then Jeremiah 51:11 says pretty much the same thing, that he's going to be stirring the Medes up to come and destroy Babylon. So, is Darius is Darius/Cyrus being king at this time and coming in and destroying Babylon a fulfillment of that prophecy? Yes, absolutely. But you can also see a reason why Daniel might want to make that very prominent, yet that yes, this was fulfillment of what God said was going to happen to Babylon. This guy is a Mede, that it's the same guy. So the other potential option here, sub-king over a smaller province. I think this is very likely as well. Maybe he's the governor or king over this area in Babylon under Cyrus's rule, which would also make sense if the rendering should be at the end of chapter 6, in the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian over him. Either way, it works out really just fine. But just so you know that, because you may run into that criticism of Daniel, and we'll probably uncover something before too long that mentions him. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that Cyrus may have left. Like, here's your new king.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We know names of even people that he put, or that we at least know he left there to govern, just not by the same name exactly, unless there's other things. So that's a little bit about that. So what is the king's assessment of Daniel's performance and his duties within the government? What does he say about him? Yeah, he's it sounds kind of like the ceremony just hasn't happened yet. It's that kind of thing where the promotion's coming, but maybe it doesn't happen for a year. But everybody knows it's happening. But what words exactly are said about his character or his spirit? Yeah, an excellent spirit was in him. Have we heard that recently? Who said it? Who just said that about him? Exact same words. You remember? Yeah, Belshazzar's wife, or the queen mother, or whoever that is, the queen of Belshazzar, says, hey, Daniel, he has an excellent spirit in him. And that was shown when he served your father Nebuchadnezzar. So exact same thing. So we've got a little bit of a link to the chapter before it here, in that he's described as having this excellent spirit in him. And he's going to be put over the kingdom, again, so that he wouldn't suffer any loss. Is he over the whole kingdom exactly, or over all the administrative things, over all the people who are over all the people, that kind of thing. So what's this plot that we see here?
Undermine the leader.
Yeah. Absolutely, and specifically, this is a softball question here. What exactly do they get the king to do? Yeah, sign a law that you can only pray or petition the king for 30 days. And as we've already mentioned, that's the only way that they've found that they're going to be able to get Daniel. It's only going to be through his law. They can't find anything against him. But Daniel, that's the interesting thing. So Daniel is obedient to his God, right? But he's so obedient to his God that he's had to fudge all of these other things within their government. Not exactly. His obedience to his God, kind of similar to what we see being expected of us, also means that he is the very best follower of this nation's laws. He is the exemplary, overseer, the best, he drives the speed limit really, really well. He's not defrauding anybody for his own gain. So, although obviously if there's something that required him to make a compromise, as we're going to see, he's not going to do that. He is, as a believer in the Most High, the best follower even of this system of law under this king here. And we know why what area of his life that they decide to attack. We'll kind of skip through this and get to it. We talked about all of this. So the punishment's going to be 30 days. If you petition anybody else for 30 days, you're going to be with the lions. Important point, though: who's able to change the law once it happens, once it's put in this set in stone, if you will? Yeah, and we've seen. Where else have we seen the same thing come up with the Medes and the Persians? In Esther, exactly. Although Xerxes or Artaxerxes, or whichever one it is, Artaxerxes, yeah, both of them. He's kind of a little bit more smart, maybe, right? He comes up with a way around it. Make another edict that also can't be changed. That's going to make this, you'd write at the end of it, except for Daniel. Yeah.
You killed all the people that we killed.
Yes, exactly. So you kind of have Darius. He probably could have done something. Could he have done something? We'll talk about it in a minute, why maybe he didn't. But yeah, so you don't change the law of the Medes and the Persians. We see that in Esther as well. The officials know that, so they make this happen. Oh man, that was supposed to... Yeah.
Does it not seem that way to you?
It absolutely does. And I will say the people that know the history in this culture say that it's a strange law even in that time. Kind of like...
It's so detailed, so specific. It's like he's either super egotistical or
stupid. Yeah. No, I think that's what we have here. We have a situation where he's bright enough to recognize Daniel should be the guy in charge, but not bright enough to not be duped in this way, or too arrogant to see it. All right, let's go ahead and read this next section here. I don't want to give that away. 10 through 18. Somebody would read 10 through 18.
When Daniel knew that the document had been signed, he went to his house where he had windows in his upper chamber open toward Jerusalem. He got down on his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God, as he had done previously. Then these men came by agreement and found Daniel making petition and plea before his God. Then they came near and said before the king concerning the injunction, O king, did you not sign an injunction that anyone who makes a petition to any god or man within 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions? The king answered and said, the thing stands fast according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be revoked. Then they answered and said before the king, Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king, or the injunction you have signed, but makes his petition 3 times a day. Then the king, when he heard these words, was much distressed and set his mind to deliver Daniel. And he labored till the sun went down to rescue him. Then these men came by agreement to the king and said to the king, know, O king, that it is a law of the Medes and the Persians that no injunction or ordinance that the king establishes can be changed. Then the king commanded, and Daniel was brought and cast into the den of lions. The king declared to Daniel, may your God, whom you serve, continually deliver you. And a stone was brought and laid on the mouth of the den. And the king sealed it with his own signet and with the signet of his lords, that nothing might be changed concerning Daniel. Then the king went to his palace and spent the night fasting. No diversions were brought to him, and sleep fled from him.
Thank you. Thank you. So I want to open this up with asking, what could Daniel have done differently? You have this edict given. Can't pray to anybody but the king. We know that he can't start praying to the king all of a sudden. What could he have done differently to still be a law-abiding Jew, to still at least abide by this command, or at least look like he's abiding by it? You know, what could he have done differently? Don't go by the window, Daniel. And go ahead and close the windows. Absolutely. Pray to your God all you want. Close all the doors and windows. What else could he have done?
That was to violate his habit of looking toward Jerusalem.
Yes, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. Absolutely. We will get to that. But yeah, we know why he wouldn't do that, and we're going to discuss that. But what else could he have done? And still not broken a single of Yahweh's laws. Which does anybody know can you tell me the passage where it says that you have to pray toward Jerusalem? It doesn't. We have an example. We have example, and we have reasons why they did that. But do they have to? We'll discuss those reasons. No.
The other thing is, there is nothing in the law that requires you to pray.
That was my next question. Somebody show me the book, chapter, and verse where it says pray 3 times a day. So Daniel, why are you doing it 3 times a day? That's really, really obvious. Can't you do it in the middle of the night instead of your established hours when nobody is going to be there watching you? What else could he have done differently? Just say it silently. Pray to yourself. Pray in your head. Don't pray out loud. What else? He didn't have to pray 3 times a day. I mean, would he have been violating God's law to take a 30-day break? It's just 30 days. It's just a 30-day break, Daniel. Daniel, you need to think about the position you have, Daniel. You are about to be set over the whole kingdom. Think of the influence you will have, Daniel. Don't get thrown out. Think of how good this will be for the people of God living in exile if you keep your position, if you stay alive, Daniel. Don't throw this away. Just take a break. But we know what he does. He doesn't do that. He doesn't do that. So yeah, we have all the things that he could have done instead. One thing we didn't mention, he goes home immediately to do this. He was like, he hears about it, he's like, well, it just so happens it's time to pray. So yeah, that's where you'll find me. Yeah, he could have run away. He could have gone out of the city. Could have taken a walk. He's a pretty important person here. They probably wouldn't have let him just go back to Judea, but he probably could have taken a carriage to the countryside for his prayer. Yeah.
We have to know that these people are out for him and that they're not going to stop him. And so this is how they're going to get him here because they're right here, right now.
Absolutely. And I think that's got to be the way he's looking at this. And that needs to be the way that we look at these kind of things, right? They're going to get you sometime, right? I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. They're gonna keep on trying until they've got you. It doesn't have to be on your knees. You could just walk around. You just say your prayer while you're making your lunch at home instead of getting down on your knees where it's really clear you're praying. You could close the windows. You don't have to do it out loud. You could take a break. You don't even maybe you don't have to pray to God, your God by his name. It's really specific that when they go to the king, that he prayed to his God. You could just stay vague, make it a vague, but, so you could say, well, how do you know I wasn't, addressing that to the king? A lot of things he could have done a little bit differently and technically still been a follower of Yahweh. But I think there's a lot to learn in that, and we'll come back to that at the end, that he doesn't take any of those easy ways out. He doesn't compromise in any way, even though a lot of his practice was not prescribed in the law. His practice was his practice, though, and he wasn't going to let that go. His personal practice was going to stay public. He wasn't going to make it private. So how does it react? He immediately disobeys the decree, not God. Doesn't think about it at all. I mean, we don't know he went home right at that moment, but it writes it as such. And why? There's a good question here. Why pray in this fashion? On your knees with the windows open. He probably bought that house because the windows face Jerusalem. Anybody know why that is? Not you, Byron. Somebody else. You mean somebody else? Everybody else a second to think about it. Or you, Bill. I mean, come on. No. Anybody know why? Why would, especially a Jewish person in exile, pray toward Jerusalem? Hope, absolutely. Absolutely. That's where you're hoping for. That's what you want back to, all of that. There's a really, really even more specific reason. What do you think, Luke? What's that? Well, yeah, the Jews were supposed to worship in Jerusalem back when they could, right? That's what you're getting at. That was the law. That was where you're supposed to worship. So yeah, he's at least praying toward it. That's something. The temple, yeah, the temple is there. And if you remember back when Solomon dedicates the temple, a couple of interesting things. Oddly enough, there's not a whole lot of people in the Old Testament actually getting on their knees and praying. There's 3, actually. And it's Solomon, I think Ezra, and Daniel here. So Solomon gets on his knees, arms outstretched in his prayer to God at the dedication of the temple. And in that prayer mentions specifically, God, I know that your people are going to rebel and that you're going to send them into captivity. But when they're there and they pray toward your temple in Jerusalem, have mercy on them and bring them back. So with that in mind, what do you think Daniel's praying about? His 3 times a day that he's not going to miss. Yeah. Please forgive us. He's interceding for his people. He's begging for forgiveness of God on behalf of his people and praying that they take him back. And it's even mentioned specifically that he would, they go to the king and they say he made his petition to God. It wasn't just a friendly conversation with God. He is making a dedicated petition that he makes and makes this practice of doing. I think very likely that's a part of his prayer. And this is one of those really strong hyperlinks back to something before in exactly how he prays and what he's praying toward here. Yeah. 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 It doesn't even exist anymore, and you're still praying toward it, and that's faith and hope, absolutely. We're gonna skip over that there. Why did they ask the king what? Hey, remember yesterday when you signed that law? Can you tell me what that law was? Why do that? Absolutely. Yeah, if they come up to him and they say, hey, Daniel's praying, they're gonna be like, oh, well, I didn't mean that. First, they make him get on record. Hey, can you get on record saying what's going to happen to anybody that prays against you real quick? Great, thank you. Okay, Daniel's over here praying, so now he can't do anything about it. You also think about you have a new king trying to establish his reign. One of his first decrees, we asked this question, okay, why didn't Darius do more? Because he probably could have. He's up all night. He's up till the evening before, and they come back to him and say, hey, no, really, you can't change this. We know you're trying to get out of it, but you can't right now. He doesn't want to kill Daniel, right? But what's more important to him here still? Yeah, his reputation, his establishing his kingdom is still most important. Not doing what's right for this innocent person who's probably going to do you a ton of good in your reign. No, I've still got to look strong. I can't look weak here. I'm a Medo-Persian king. I can't, this scene, my first thing being kind of going back on what I said I would do. So again, manipulation tactics out the wazoo there, yeah. Absolutely. If he knows his history of this same area, he knows that very well. And I think really important to note, how do they describe Daniel there? I mean, did he need the explanation of who Daniel was? Does Darius know who Daniel was? Say, hey, yeah, that Jew that's one of those exiles. Not, hey, the one you're about to make second in command that's really, really important to your kingdom. No. He's that Jewish exile, and that tells us a little bit more even about how these people view Daniel. And I think we can absolutely see this kind of thing happening today. This is how politics in human nations work. So what really important phrase, that thing that Darius says to Daniel right before throwing him in the lion's den. Whom you worship how? Continually. Even the king, who's got a lot of bigger fish to fry, knows Daniel's practice of worshiping continually. I don't know how it worked. I don't know if Daniel worked from home. But somehow Daniel was 3 times a day back in his dwelling up on the 2nd floor. Do you think that interrupted some kingly meetings sometimes? Probably so. I would imagine so. And so the king knows this about him. And then what is done to make sure that nothing changes? Seals, not just his seals, but all the other prefect seals are put there, the signets of the other lords, so that nothing would change concerning Daniel. And there's got to be a little bit of a hyperlink forward there to another sealed tomb later on. All right, so let's look a little bit further on here. I'll go ahead and read this. All right, verse 19 down through the end of the chapter. Then at break of day, the king arose and went in haste to the den of lions. As he came near to the den where Daniel was, he cried out with a tone of anguish. The king declared to Daniel, "O Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions?" Then Daniel said to the king, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, and they have not harmed me, because I was found blameless before him. And also before you, O king, I have done no harm." Then the king was exceedingly glad and commanded that Daniel be taken up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no kind of harm was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. And the king commanded, and those men who had maliciously accused Daniel were brought and cast into the den of lions, they, their children, and their wives. And before they reached the bottom of the den, the lions overpowered them and broke all their bones in pieces. Then King Darius wrote to all the people, nations, and language that dwell in all the earth, "Peace be multiplied to you. I make a decree that in all my royal dominion, people are to tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his dominion shall be to the end. He delivers and rescues. He works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth. He who has saved Daniel from the power of the lions." So this Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. So what's the king do? What's it? Can you, picture it? Think about it. Is this the kind of thing a pompous king usually does? Get up and run in haste down to where we usually execute people?
He's been stressed over the whole situation, so the next morning, he's up early and he's very upset. And
Yeah.
goes in anguish.
Yes.
Hey, are you okay? Will you rescued? Did God take care of you?
Absolutely. And we learn cries out in a tone of anguish. Just tells you how upset he was that this is happening, and calls out to him. And how does he address Daniel? Yeah, you're Daniel, servant of the living God. So what is that? Darius, king of the pagan people, is calling Yahweh the real living God. In contrast, and by implication, the other gods are not living gods, right? Has your God, whom you serve continually, but what is it? Darius doesn't know all that much about Yahweh yet, because what does he say? Has he been able to? Exactly. Yeah, he's not so sure. He thinks any God that had the ability would save somebody like Daniel, right? He knows that. But he says, has he been able to? And absolutely he has been. And what do we see what do you notice about Daniel's response? O king, live forever. Still acknowledges him by his, the royal title. The malicious guys, the last time they went back to the king, they didn't even use the whole royal thing that you're supposed to, "O king, live forever." They say, "O king, you're supposed to be doing this." Daniel from the pit of the lion's den, who Darius probably would have understood if he was like, "Yeah, I'm here, get me out of here," and if he didn't respond to him in this way. But he still responds to him with respect. Why does Daniel say that God was able, that God saved him? He's innocent. Yeah, God found him innocent before both, right? First, though, what's his priority here? God found me innocent before him, right? And by the way, Darius, I'm also innocent in you. I have not done a thing wrong. That's the secondary matter in his mind. He attributes it to God. God sent his angel to deliver me, and he closed the mouth of the lions. Have we seen God send an angel to deliver people before? Yeah, there's a fourth guy in the furnace, right? And apparently he was back, closing the mouth of the lions. And again, what's his condition? Back when we had the three friends, they come out of the furnace, they don't even smell like smoke, right? If you know how it is. You walked past a campfire, and then you get home and your wife's like, "Oh, you take a shower, you smell like campfire." They don't smell like it at all. It wasn't like he had to fight off the lions, but just barely stayed alive. No, he's pals with the lions. They're hanging out. They don't have the ability to harm him at all. And again, it's specifically stated because he trusted in God. And if you think about being a Jew in this, this gives you a lot of confidence, a lot of hope. This would be really bolstering to their faith and should be to ours. He's got to be pleased not only because he likes Daniel a lot, but also he doesn't have to live with that on his conscience. Maybe he can get in the good graces of his God. He comes up out of the pit. We see, obviously, this is a precursor, a picture of resurrection to come in Jesus. And then we see, again, the others, they are thrown and they get that fate. Sad that this had to happen to them. Do you see something different in these people that, remember Nebuchadnezzar threatened the same thing or a similar thing happen, that they be killed and their families and their homes turned into a rubbish heap. Nebuchadnezzar said that about anybody who couldn't interpret his dream. What's the difference in those people that almost got killed in that way then and these people now? Yeah, right? They weren't serving the right gods and everything, but it just happened to be that way, and Daniel was able to save them. These people, on the other hand, they don't incur the salvation of God. God does not have mercy on them. Why? Because they are maliciously, intentionally going against God. Very different circumstances here. And obviously, it's one of those things where I'm sure Daniel would have opposed throwing their families into the lion's den as well. Absolutely. But the consequences then of going against God are far-reaching. They reach to our children and our children's children. We see this amazing declaration, a new law given. Nebuchadnezzar made kind of a similar law. What's different than this law than the one that Nebuchadnezzar sent out? Yeah, he kind of. Exactly. Nebuchadnezzar's decrees, hey, decreeing that this guy is the most high God, yada, yada, yada. This has an action in it as well. It's even further. The people have gotten more malicious against God's people, but the king actually is a greater respecter of God after this than Nebuchadnezzar was, in a way, because he says, all people have to tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. There's an active respect being seen here. All right, let's get on to the lessons that we can take away from this. I'd love, just really quickly, what jumps out to you as a lesson that we need to be learning in our specific lives to take away from this story? Yes, absolutely. God always comes first. And the standard is much higher even than just, let me pare the word down just to exactly what I have to do. Okay, that still fits within this law. I can still do it exactly like this, just pared down to exactly what he said to do and still be okay and still not incur the wrath of the government or whatever else. No, even his practice of how he had chosen to serve God could not compromise based on this. What else do we learn? Yes, trust in God, absolutely. And it's easy to read these stories back to back to back and get this idea that God is going to bodily save his people from suffering, right? But what do we know happens to the first century Christians later on? Burned, sawn in two, stoned. So is this a different God here than? But they were delivered. The question is just when, right? Absolutely. What else do you learn?
Along those lines that God's faithful.
Absolutely. God is faithful, and God is faithful to the faithful.
We have an example here. More situation we had with Joseph. Both, in a place where they didn't want to be, with circumstances out of their own control, where it'd be easy to feel like God had just let them alone. And God did not leave either Daniel or Joseph alone. He took care of them and really gave them an opportunity to bring glory to Him in their lives in a foreign land.
Absolutely. And I hope you can see how intentional the story is told to remind you of Joseph. Because when Joseph gets thrown into prison, what's the word used for that prison? A pit. He's thrown into a pit. Joseph gets thrown into a pit and then into another pit and rises up out of those pits. And so then we have Daniel thrown into a pit of lions. And, same words used here. So we'll just go through these. We've just mentioned, I think an important lesson we need to take away is there's no such thing as just a small compromise. It's just a little bit. That's not technically violating the law. Yes, it's going to make us change what we do, but is it technically violating God's law?
If you have to think that way, you are.
Yeah. And I have to say, for myself at least, if COVID happens again, I'm going to have to in my conscience, I'm going to have to handle it a little bit differently. I'm not going to go back and point blame. We were all figuring out what in the world are we doing, right? But I'm going to have to handle it differently for my family than we did last time. We can't, our justifications, just small little compromises and justifications. Daniel was, his faith was shown through the fact that he didn't compromise even on the negotiables. And this is the third time we see in this story where Daniel or his friends take a public stand based on principle when they could have kind of technically complied and avoided technically breaking the law. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, just sit down. You don't have to bow. Sit down so you don't stand out so they, right? Don't show up that day. Call in sick. Do something else. Daniel, pick out the meat that's sacrificed to idols, or find somebody to bring you meat in on the side, right? He's not going to do it. He's not going to compromise, even when there's probably another way around it, and goes ahead and takes a public stand on a personal conviction. I think a big one, don't be surprised when they revile you. The more and more our culture goes to this is a polytheistic, uber-tolerant culture, right? We love all gods, right? That's what we live in now. Just a little bit different flavor on it. The more super ultra tolerant a culture becomes, the more intolerant it is going to become of people who only follow the one faith. Faith looks like keeping our personal faith public. This is the one that really struck me at my heart, because I feel like I'm often an expert at going unnoticed in my faith. Well, I usually pray before lunch, but I'm sitting with my coworkers here. I'm not going to go take a moment. Daniel keeps his personal faith public. Faithfulness can look like getting thrown to lions, burned, stoned, sawn in two. God is not going to remove all of even our much lesser sufferings. So if we have a theology in our heart that's kind of like this prosperity gospel, I'm a good Christian, so God's got that spouse for me somewhere down the road. The bad thing happened to me because He's got something better in store around the next corner. Maybe that's true. Maybe it is, but maybe it's not. Maybe your circumstance isn't going to get better. Maybe Daniel didn't get saved from the lion's den. Maybe Daniel's friends didn't get saved from the fiery furnace. Would God still be faithful? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we need to remember that. God will make all things right, but it may not be right now. We mentioned that. And God sent His angel. God is present with us in the pit, just like the furnace, just like the tomb. And the faithful will rise from the pit and the tomb. I know I'm over, but I just want you to see Jesus and Daniel real quick. You have malicious leaders with political jealousy and envy manipulating a ruler to have a perfect man put to, which if you look at Joseph and Daniel, there are a couple of those people in the Bible where they, certainly Daniel sinned, certainly Joseph sinned, but you won't find anything that you can even remotely twist to be sinful in either Daniel or Joseph's lives, even though, Abraham sins, Moses sins a lot, but, even those people, but these are specifically crafted in how they're told because they're pictures of Jesus. They're perfect men who go through through similar pictures of what Jesus goes through. So they have a perfect man put to death. The pit is sealed with a big stone, and there's an anxious night or a couple of nights. There's rushing in hope, to the tomb. There's joy at miraculous life. But what's the one thing that's different? I think this kind of goes to a point. What's the difference between Daniel and Jesus? There's a lot of differences, but in what actually happens here, Daniel didn't die. God saved Daniel. God did not spare Jesus the cross. He did not spare Jesus' death. And that's what we follow him into, right? I think that's an important lesson for us to take away from it. But did God still save him from death ultimately? Yeah, in the resurrection, and in a much more fantastic way even than he does Daniel. He lets Jesus go to the cross to be our sacrifice and resurrects him so that we can share in that. Excited for second Sunday next month so we can get in Daniel 7 and get to the really, really fun stuff. Thank you all.